stage. I saw it in Philly.
Okay, I just hit record, man. Chad. Heads up.
You did?
It's
Let's
Tuesday,
talk about
noon.
TAP.
Yeah, Tuesday, September 29th. Wow, we're almost done with September. Wow. Who's ready for October?
Halloween.
I know. Yeah, Halloween's fun. You know,
that's good. That's everybody's holiday. Nobody owns Halloween. You never heard anybody say, "Oh, I'm going home for Halloween this year." Nobody's ever said that.
Yeah.
We own it. It's ours. We can do it however we want.
I don't think it's happening though this year.
It'll happen somehow.
Oh, it depends on where you live, probably.
Socially distanced. Yeah. That's true.
Okay, I'm going to jump right into this because I'm going to try my best to keep this to a half hour, and that was the original intent, and we kind of got away.
Right.
We go 45, 50 minutes, but we'll try to get this to a half hour. Before I get into the topics that I emailed, I want to mention Microsoft. I should have put that on the list. Microsoft Office, it blew up yesterday afternoon, Microsoft Office 365. And according to their page today, it says we're all good, everything is up and running, but I've had to re-authenticate, reconnect. I still get notifications that I haven't done it in all my apps because we have a lot of integration. And I noticed in Teams, I've had to resend, and some things we have a group, Wyatt, that I think you helped start, where just focuses on the support team versus the entire team. And I couldn't get that to come up. So I think there's still some fallout from that. And, it hit a large group of our clients and ourselves, and it's frustrating, but we're kind of at the mercy of the Microsoft Cloud when that happens.
Yeah.
I'm still getting pop-ups.
From what I had to re-authenticate this morning, but I'm into everything again, and I haven't seen too many support requests coming in today. So I think that in general, it's worked itself out. So
yeah. So if you go to portal.office.com/service status, I'll put it in chat, is the current situation as far as Microsoft is concerned. So I think if you're still having issues, restart your computer and re-authenticate as you get the prompts. And I've noticed when I restarted that Teams opened right away, but wasn't fully connected because there was another dialog box from Microsoft wanting me to authenticate and enter my two-factor. So once I did that, entered it, I went back to Teams and I restarted Teams, and it appears to be working. But heads up on that. I want to mention something I put on the list: changing passwords. So we always talk about you should use unique passwords. You should use a password manager. You should have secure passwords. And in the process of dealing with day-to-day technology, I noticed that my Nest password, the Nest thermostat, which I have had for years, said it was either a compromised or an insecure password. And I looked at it, and sure enough, it wasn't a common one that I used, but it was a short one, probably because years ago you had to dial that password in to the Nest. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to have something too complicated. Today, you can do it through the iPhone pretty easily. But I thought, well, no problem. I'm going to change my passcode. And I tell you, it was a challenge. It was so challenging that I honestly had to stop and then try it again the next day, and I was successful the next day. But part of the challenge is, Google acquired Nest, so I have the original Nest. I have the original Nest account. It keeps wanting me to move that to a Google account, and maybe I should, but I just haven't done it yet. And every time I tried to change the passcode, it would say fail. It just wouldn't work. I was trying to do it from the app, tried to do it from my iPad to a web browser, eventually went to my computer and tried to do it. Every single time, fail, fail, fail. I said, forget it, I'm going to bed. The next day, I did the exact same thing and it worked. So clearly there was something going on with Nest and their infrastructure at the time I was trying to change my passcode. But that's frustrating, man. And that's why people give up on this stuff and they just use the same passcode and make it easy over and over until, something happens. So I've seen enough bad stuff happen that I was motivated to get that password changed. But I'm sure not everyone is as motivated. Have you guys ever had problems changing your passcode?
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and it's one of those things. That's exactly what you say, and I think we talked about this in one of our trainings recently with one of our clients. And the analogy that I chose that time was about teaching a kid to ride a bicycle, right? If I'm a little kid and I've never ridden a bicycle before, I go out to that bicycle. I don't need a helmet. I'm invincible. Once I start riding that bike and I nail it and I'm cruising all over the place, there's nothing going to stop me from doing my will, right? Bending that bicycle to my will. And I have that in my mind whenever I'm building an experience for somebody. It doesn't really matter if it's technology related or security or resilience or any of this stuff related. I really think about this. And the problem with the way that we have generally done things over the years up till now is that when someone hurts themselves on their bicycle, or I'm not saying our clients are children, I'm just using that as an analogy to try to make it clear, right? When an incident, something happens to us, let's say that having an accident on our bicycle is like clicking on a link that we shouldn't have, right? Probably not going to kill us, right? But it's going to mess up our day at the very least, right? And so what happens is, for many years, we've then given people then helmets to be safer, right? Which in the form of antivirus. Now it's anti-malware, right? It doesn't really matter, but we give them some tool, some awareness training, whatever. They put that helmet on, they get back on their bike. Now they act even more riskier. Is that right? More riskier. They take even bigger risks because now they feel like, oh, I was invincible before. Now I've got this helmet to protect me, or that could be also translated as, well, IT's taking care of this.
Yeah.
Right. We don't have to worry about this. They gave us these tools. We don't have to worry about that. They got this covered. Right. And because that general kind of perspective has been transmitted somehow, I don't think intentionally, but that's the idea that most everyday people have. And how do we, how can we help elevate their awareness and kind of break through that myth? That's what I think about a lot.
So you're saying that people think, oh, I don't need to worry because I've got endpoint protection or anti-malware or an
I'm using
IT
a
team.
VPN or whatever.
And,
it would be like, exactly.
And we know that you need all that stuff to reduce your risk. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for your passcodes and who you let in and who you share those passcodes with and how you use those passcodes. And that's the piece that I think a lot of people are missing, and we try to get the word out. So, yeah, that's a good point.
And to kind of connect that, maybe I didn't connect that very well, is, if we make these tools and these things that we can all do to minimize our risk, if we make those things not friendly, we're going to work around it, right? We're going to find a way around that, like you said, and end up creating more risk for ourselves and everyone. So the problem with reusing passwords is a great example.
Yeah, it was just one of those situations where it wasn't giving me a lot of information. Like at first, I did a randomly generated passcode that didn't have enough random characters or uppercase, lowercase. Like there were certain criteria. And once I got, I see what I'm doing. Once I fixed that, it still wasn't working. And it was just a generic, like, sorry, this isn't working message. It didn't tell me why.
Not helpful.
And after I tried several times, gave up, came back the next day and it worked, realized it was just something wrong with the system at that time. But the other thing is, anytime you have to change your passcodes and you got to remember the old one and then you got to put the new one in twice. If that doesn't work like 2 or 3 times because you're trying to get the right combination, at that point, it's like, oh my God, what was that passcode again? And so you really need that password manager to kind of track that stuff and to help you. It's so hard to do it by yourself. So password managers.
1Password, gonna beat that dead horse every week.
Yeah.
1Password. 1Password.
That's helpful.
Okay.
It's the best $3 a month you can spend.
And it'll save so much time. It saves so much time. I mean, I mean, there are exceptions, and you will talk to people who will bring those up first thing. They will bring up the exceptions, and that's true. There are exceptions regardless, even if we're managing passwords in a notebook, right? There's going to be some financial services sites in particular, right? Banking sites, that are 10 years behind the curve, and they're going to not let you use a password that's longer than 16 characters. Your password manager is going to choke on it because they're set to generate really long ones. And and unfortunately, that responsibility is on the financial institutions to take that work off of us as consumers. But I'm not holding my breath. That's just
if
one
only
of the
they
things.
have resources to do that, Chad. It's too bad that they're so hard up that they can't get their get their tech up to date.
It is ironic.
Chad, quick question for you on that note, though. Isn't it now in your in the InfoSec community? Isn't it widely agreed now that longer passwords are better than shorter, more complex? Does length trump complexity now?
Yeah, for sure. It's always been about length. I mean, not to mince words and cryptography, right? Crypto, that world, it has always been about length more than complexity. And I think the complexity thing was the shortcut for a lot of IT folks to say, just to get folks to do something that was better. Any small incremental improvement, right? And that just kind of stuck around, I think. I mean, that's how I kind of experienced it.
That's a good point. But, and the other thing, Chad, I'll barge right in here to move things along, is the outdated view that you have to change your password like every 90 days. Like anytime I see that, it's still frustrating because even Microsoft, who's always been kind of a little slow,
they've been doing great. They've been killing it, man.
Yeah, they've been saying for at least the past year that no, new best practices say have one good, to your point, Wyatt, long password that's secure, and don't change it unless there's a reason. And there could be reasons like a breach or data loss or something. But for the most part, don't force your employees to change their passcodes.
No, those are NIST standards, right? This isn't like just something randomly that InfoSec people decided on. These are a set of NIST standards. You can go to NANCI.gov, National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yeah, they're right down the street from me. They're my neighbors. So
they're fantastic. The kinds of things that they've done, and considering the qualitative component of how people use technology. They made this isn't recent. This isn't a recent change, right? This is like 3 years ago, I think now, that they made. A lot of other organizations and even in regulated industries haven't caught up to this yet. They're still changing passwords, forcing folks to change their passwords every 90 days or something, right? And the downside of this is, if we think it through, the reason they removed that from their standard is because it does encourage people to reuse passwords. And so even if you're reusing 3 passwords, that's bad, right? And so it was, and it forcing people to do that every 90 days, they just found workarounds that actually created more risk. And so
you add a special character, you add another letter, and then you're just keeping the same password, but varying it slightly every quarter.
And using it everywhere else.
Exactly.
In addition to it. So there's a lot of things that have changed that, it just takes it takes us a long time for those things we learn to trickle into our practice. And we just have to keep nudging people to remind them.
So before we get to Wyatt and his demo on macOS privacy, and I'll give you an intro on that, Wyatt, in just a minute, I want to talk about spoofed domains, because we had a client this week whose domain was spoofed. And what do I mean by that? It means that somebody intentionally acquired a domain that looked nearly identical to their domain, with the exception of one character. And that character looks very similar to the original character. So at first glance, especially on a small screen like a phone, an email address, they look nearly the same. So once you own a domain like that, you can impersonate somebody, and you can go, I can go to the website, the real website, and see all the clients listed, and I can start contacting those clients using my spoof domain and start impersonating that website to see what I can get. Yeah.
To be clear, when Ben is talking about a spoof domain, that could be confusing for some. Because spoofing can be like, just a simple impersonating someone. They actually, in this case, the criminals bought a domain let's pretend that the client is called automobiles.com. .com. They bought automobiles.com, but they bought automobiles with 2 L's, right? Instead of 1 L, BILE. S, they bought one with 2 L's. So anyone getting email or communications or any interactions with people from automobiles.com would look, really close
Right.
to the
At
legit,
first glance,
right?
it looks
First
legit.
glance, yep. But it's
easy
not. And so
enough.
it's very intentional. Yeah, very
Right.
intentional criminal activity.
It's easy enough to go online and through LinkedIn, through a website, through any number of sources, figure out names, real names of real people at that company. And then, Joe or Jane Smith at automobiles.com with 2 L's, you start having conversations with people. There are sure to be people who don't notice that domain and they fall for it. So,
Be very
obviously,
cautious. Yeah, a lot of this going on.
there's nothing you can do from stopping people from buying your domains unless you buy them first, but that's kind of a fool's errand. I mean, you'd have to,
Not sustainable.
Yeah. So what you can do, obviously, security awareness training, and if you do discover anything like that, notify everyone you know about it as soon as you discover it, so that they can protect themselves from being,
The best thing you can do. Really important.
Fallen.
Really important.
Yeah. Okay.
And
so
not just
spoof
for
domains.
yourself, but for, like, if you do notice something like that and you don't let people know, that's not good, because then eventually they're going to trace it back to you. They'll figure it out. Email logs and things. And, there's so many different kinds of this going on now. We just have to keep each other educated. We're our own best defense, right? The human firewall, as they say. So it's important.
Yeah. So once again, as always, if anything looks strange or out of the ordinary in a communication, whether it's the wording or phrasing or, I know we all make mistakes with grammar and spelling sometimes, even with these amazing tools we have. But if anything looks weird, scrutinize it, look at it, pick up the phone, verify it.
Verify. Trust, but verify, we always say.
Yeah. I mean, we had somebody request, related story. We had a client request, they needed their two-factor reset to one of their devices, one of their logins. And this sounds pretty straightforward. This is a client. We know they have two-factor. We know we can reset it. We know, it should be easy enough. And I was thinking, because I saw this ticket, how would I verify that this is the right person? In fact, I could call them. They gave me a phone number. I could call them. But I've never talked to this person. I don't know what their voice sounds like. I don't know. They could tell me anything. They're like, oh, okay, great. So rather than do that, we reached out to our primary contact and we got authorization from them. And we said, could you please, call this employee and verify that they are requesting this? And sure enough, it was legit, and everyone felt good about it, and we moved forward. But it could have been someone impersonating that employee, and you need some way to verify that. It sounds maybe overkill, or that's extreme, but it really isn't. Yeah.
People will be grateful to you for verifying, and especially now, and every little bit of, every little thing we can do for peace of mind for ourselves and for others counts.
Yeah. Okay. Mac OS privacy. So when I say Mac OS privacy, I'm talking about these pop-ups that is probably since 1014, definitely 1015. People see.
Really, yeah, 1014, it really came into the forefront. And then especially in 1015 Catalina, we have even more granular privacy that we have to allow. So, any given piece of software, when it wants to access a system resource, whether that, your camera, your downloads folder, you have to allow it now. Whereas in 1013 and earlier, you would just simply go and check off that application and accessibility and call it a day. We now have multiple entries in 1014 and 1015. The reason that I suggested to Ben that we touch on this today is we get a lot of requests from folks, whether it's, I can't share my screen, or, people can't hear me. So it's just going to kind of go through where you can resolve those things on your machine, where those live typically. Some of our clients that have standard user accounts, you may need to contact us, because we do have to unlock that pane to get in there, and I can show you what that looks like in a moment. Those of you that have administrator user accounts, you should no problem getting in there. We
Yeah,
at
and I
Free
think
Computers now, though,
even
have the ability to promote you to an administrative user, though, for a specified amount of time so that you can go in there, unlock that pane, check those things off, and get done what you need to get done without having to, to deal with one of us nerds. So just wanted to show you how to do that.
Yeah, let's show them, and it is super confusing. Just as an example, an application may ask for access to share your screen,
Right.
but in the system preferences that we're going to show you, it's not called share your screen, or it's not called screen sharing. In fact, I think it's called screen recording.
Yep.
Right. So
Yeah.
super confusing. You're not recording your screen, or at least it doesn't feel like you are. But that's the privilege that you have to approve. And the history behind this is Apple's trying to, protect people with better security and privacy. And the way to do that is to ask questions and have you intentionally authorize it. The problem is they kind of dump this on all of us, a little unexpected, with some confusing dialog boxes, an overwhelming number of dialog boxes, and oftentimes people don't know what to click or not click. And then add to that, if you're not an administrator, you may or may not be able to check the correct box. Some boxes, even as a non-admin, you can check. Some you cannot. Right. And the last piece of that is Apple took away the ability for people like us to remotely click boxes for anyone sitting in front of the computer. And that could be annoying when we're trying to help you, but that's actually a good thing, because it does prevent hackers from getting into your machine and remotely clicking some of these boxes. But I would say Apple did not do a great job of rolling this out. And I don't know what we're going to see in the next version, Big Sur. But Wyatt, let's share your screen and show.
I need you to allow me to do that, Ben.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's see. Participants. Assign moderator. There we go.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. So we'll go ahead and share.
And as we pull this up, go ahead, Wyatt. Let's see what we're looking at first.
So we're starting right in system preferences, right? So system preferences, you can launch either from the Apple in the left-hand corner. A lot of folks will have it on the dock. It's in your utilities folder, in your applications utilities folder. All roads lead to system preferences. This is what system preferences looks like in 10.15 Catalina. It's a little bit different in Mojave, but from here, we want to go to security and privacy. And that looks the same. The icon's the same. It's a little house with the deadbolt or padlock on it. So we'll click on that, and then generally it'll land on the general tab, which is not where we want to be. We want to be in privacy, the tab here. And we'll just go line by line. So as Ben talked about, and I did as well, if you're an administrator, you want to unlock this first by clicking on the lock. If you have Touch ID, you can use Touch ID, or you can authenticate with your password. If you're not an administrator, you can contact us, and we can either connect with you and unlock it, or we can promote you to an administrator. I believe it's 5 to 10 minutes. We have the ability to do a couple of different lengths of time. So location services is just like it sounds. Any application in here is going to be, is going to have access to your location. And so you can come in here and dial, this in the way you like. System services, this one I've found to be pretty important when it comes to time. With other software, you want to make sure that time zone and system customization is checked. And if you use Find My Mac, those are the only two I have checked. I don't care about all this other gobbledygook, but that's up to you. And then I also like to check the box so that I know when my location is being used. It'll show up in the menu bar. It'll have this icon similar to that of iOS. So that's the location services. We'll just go quickly through contacts. Any applications in here will have access to your contacts. Calendars, same story.
And just to confirm, Wyatt, they only have access if they're clicked. So,
correct.
Like I see, you have, Druva put itself there, but you haven't authorized it, so it does not have access to your contacts until you
That's
click
right.
that box. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I don't need Druva backing my contacts up, so I decided to leave that unchecked. And that's a great point, Ben. Even if an application is listed, that doesn't mean that it's accessing that system resource necessarily. It has to be checked. Calendar, same story. Druva asked for permission to my calendar, and I said no, because I don't need it backing my calendar up. That's all in the cloud. Same thing with reminders. Photos, same thing. If you have apps that want access to photos and reminders, they will appear over here. More importantly, to what we do at Forget, you're going to want to look at the camera. So if you get, if you're in Zoom, if you are in Ring Central, you're in Microsoft Teams, and people can't see you, you're going to want to check here to make sure that Microsoft Teams, Ring Central, Zoom, all are in here and checked. Now, the one thing that's a little confusing is we don't have the ability to manually add it here. So if Zoom wants to access your camera, you'll have to open Zoom and then start a meeting, at which point you'll be prompted, Zoom wants to use your camera. Is this okay? Then you can say yes. You do have to trigger it. I haven't found another way around. When it comes to getting the apps to populate in here, you can't do it manually. Same with the microphone.
Yeah.
Microphone and camera are the same there. So if folks are having a hard time hearing you, make sure to check in here that the application you're using has access to your microphone. So my computer, Zoom, Ring Central, Microsoft Teams have access to my microphone. Speech recognition.
Chad, you had a question?
Sorry, Chad?
I think Chad had a question, and you're muted.
Yeah.
Okay, there you are.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering. In the old days, it seemed like we used to have to drag and drop Schwack in here for like login items and jazz like that. Have we tried? You want to try it like right now, just for kicks? That's trying to drag an app in there just to see.
Yeah, we can give it a shot.
If there's not a hook, then it's not going to Then it's probably not going to work anyway.
What's interesting, Chad, is if we go to accessibility, all of a sudden we do have that option, right? Same thing with full disk access, same thing, files, folders. So we can try it. Let me see.
I don't think it'll work, but it's
you don't even. You can't even remove the app from this window. You can just unclick it.
I don't know if it's going to work. I'm trying to find an app that would be applicable to a microphone.
Can't hear you.
It's not already in here. Funny. Firefox. Let's see.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it drags and drops. That's a good idea, Chad, but it doesn't look like it. So I think you do have to rely on the application to trigger it, and that's where people get into problems because the application prompts, people bypass or ignore or click the wrong button, prompt goes away, and then they can't get it working. So you basically have to start over at that point. You have to quit the app.
Restart? Do you have to restart ever that far?
I mean, maybe, but definitely restart the app. And then join the meeting or reshare the screen or do something to prompt it.
That's right.
And then go there and approve it.
The confusing part there, and I think what might scare some folks away, is the wording. I was on with a user the other day who wasn't able to share her screen, and I came into screen recording, and she was like, "No, I don't want my screen recorded." Screen recording doesn't necessarily mean your screen is being recorded. This is also for screen sharing in Zoom, in Ring Central, but we'll continue in the order of things. So back 10.13 and earlier, all you had to have was accessibility checked for any given application to utilize system resources. Still the case. Still want to make sure that your apps that you want to share your screen, you want to use your microphone, things like that. Make sure they're checked in accessibility. Teams.
And I
Ring
think,
Central, Zoom,
this is just for like physical remote control or like sharing mouse and keyboard in this area. And this is the one area where it looks like you can add an app, remove an app.
That's right. You can add apps in here. So you can still choose to add and remove apps here in accessibility.
Yeah, I'm looking at my apps, and my apps, the only ones that are checked are Zoom, Ring Central, and Teams. Those are all sharing like this, and sometimes we do screen control. And then I also have this app called Magnet, which allows me with key commands to move windows to the left or right or quarter, top, bottom. And anything that manipulates the screen like that would need access here.
from accessibility. Okay.
Yeah.
Input monitoring, I haven't seen any software that we use for business show up in here, so I'm not exactly sure what kind of software would go into input monitoring. But if you have a piece of software that asks for access to input monitoring, maybe this is keystrokes. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that could use that. It could be mechanical. It could be, it could be like an analog switch, something, some of this overlaps with accessibility a little bit, but there are quite a few that do that. And that's, your point is really important, really big one. And it's important because how this reads, it would be easy to take this literally and be like, no. And then none of your schwack's going to work.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Moving down the list, now we have full disk access. These apps have full disk access. So really this one, you're going to want to make sure that, I have Malwarebytes that has full disk access, Mac Manage, our software delivery platform, software update. I believe this has something to do with Adigy. I believe that's why that's checked. I think that's our remote terminal. And that's it. Or Block and Knock. Never mind about those two.
Well, those are great apps. Those are Objective-C. Those are great apps for security. Knock is kind of your kind of help me understand services that are coming and going on my computer. And Block is really awesome for shutting stuff down that gets on there that's kind of nasty, right? There's all these different kinds of malware and there's all these different kinds of adware too. I mean, it's really kind of hard to define, and those are free tools that are available. Wyatt uses them, I use them. But again, it's comfort zone. That's all I wanted to say about that.
What's scroll up, Wyatt, on that pane? Mac Tracker. Yeah, I wonder why Mac Tracker is even in there. Like, what would it be potentially doing?
I don't know.
I mean, I run Mac Tracker as well. I don't see it on my list, but
yeah, when it asks for full disk access, I don't know if maybe it's wanting to see what kind of machine I have, or maybe it's wanting to write the disk. I'm not sure, but this is a pretty big one. Full disk access is just like it sounds. This one's probably more of a concern in my mind than screen recording.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Files and folders would be probably just a step up from that. So you can say, well, these already have full disk access. That's why it's showing that. But in here, this is where you'll get certain programs like Brave is a browser I use, or certain applications that'll want to access the downloads folder. Slack would be a good example because, say someone sends you a file in Slack or whatever chat client you use. In order to download that folder, you'll have to allow the app access to the downloads folder. And the downloads folder is a system resource, just like the microphone or the disk, the hard disk itself. So that's where this is a bit more granular than the full disk access, where it's just like, yep, you get everything. Here, you can dial it in a little tighter. Here's a big one. I can't share my screen, but we get that a lot. This is why. Screen recording, 9 times out of 10. Zoom, you notice it's not checked. I don't really use Zoom. That's why I don't have it checked. But Ring Central Teams, I wouldn't be sharing my screen right now if this box right here wasn't checked. So make sure that your box is checked in here. And just to clarify again, technically my screen is being recorded right now because Ben hit record in this meeting. However, if we were just having a meeting and I was sharing my screen, it's not being recorded that we know of, right? So don't be afraid of the word.
We should, last thing you do when you're done is we'll uncheck Ring Central and see what happens.
Okay, cool. Automation is the next one down. Ben, maybe you can talk a little clearer on automation and why. I generally don't even go into automation, but my guess is
I think these are all plugins.
Uses my Outlook calendar to link so that when I open the Ring Central app, I can see what video appointments I have coming up. So I think they consider that automation, where it's accessing Outlook to link Ring Central into it.
Actually, this raises an interesting point because I didn't realize Microsoft add-ins or plugins were living here. And actually, this looks like Ring Central. So I don't know exactly what this is, but we have had people say that their integration isn't working, and I wonder if they don't have this checked properly when that's
That's a
happening.
good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, if you're using an Outlook plugin, then
Hmm.
you might want to come check system preferences, security, privacy, automation, and make sure the box is checked there. This is the
Yeah.
Ring Central video plugin here that I don't use because I do everything through Ring Central. I don't do it through Outlook, so that's why I don't have it on.
Well,
Um,
actually, I use the Ring Central Video plugin in Outlook, and I only have what you have checked: Ring Central, Microsoft Outlook. That's the
hmm,
only thing in my list. The only thing I have checked, and that is working. So that may be an outdated one, but it looks like you
okay,
can't remove it
now,
probably until you uninstall the software.
yeah,
Um,
probably when it goes away.
yeah,
Um, and
Well,
then
there's
for
probably
those
a
of
plist
you,
file somewhere you could edit, but that's a hassle.
yeah,
uh, while you're in here, I always like to check off limit ad tracking. That's just me. You can dial in your advertising preferences here, as well as analytics. If you don't want to share your analytics with app developers, you don't want your voice, if you use Siri or dictation on your machine, if you don't want that information sent to Apple, you can remove that here, as well as the diagnostic information from your machine. That's the last entry on here in this list.
yeah. So if you have the ability to clean this up, and you'll have to be an admin, and in some cases you'll have to either remove the application or uncheck it or uninstall the entire application from your computer. Just be prepared. If you make a mistake and you go too aggressively, you're going to have to put that stuff back. Um, so be
So
aware,
the
but
big
this is
ones,
definitely an area we can't ignore any longer. We all have to kind of go
right?
in here sometimes and look at this and audit it, or use it to fix something that's not working.
Yep, that's yeah. While you're in here, if you're I can't share my screen, you come in, you're checking your box. Take that second to make sure that everything in your files folders, your full disk access looks good, and you're okay with that. To Ben's point, you don't want to have full disk access for a program you're not aware of or files and folders. But the main things that the reason this came up today. For most folks, for most end users, the big three that you'll want, or four that you'll want to look at, are accessibility, accessibility, microphone, camera, and screen recording. For our purposes of video conferencing and our sharing of screens and things like that, those four: accessibility, microphone, camera, screen
Hmm.
recording, are the big four that we notice a lot need to
Yeah.
be addressed. So,
And if you're using any of these applications like Zoom or Ring Central in a web browser, you have to give the web browser access.
that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I've got, well, I thought Brave was in here, but it's not because I use the application. But that's a good point, Ben. Yeah, if you are using it in the web browser, you're going to have to give, Google Chrome screen recording
Mhm.
access, Google Chrome microphone
So
access,
yeah,
or
there's
whatever
Brave.
browser you're using. Yeah, here's Brave.
So Wyatt,
And
I'm just curious, while you're sharing your screen, and if you
yeah,
uncheck Ring Central, what happens? Does it warn you?
probably going
Does
to
it?
tell me. Yeah, it usually says you'll have to quit it to change it. It has to restart the
Um,
app.
did you just uncheck it?
I did. Yeah,
Yeah, you
Without
that's
just
your
generally what
screen,
disappeared.
happens.
yeah. So it's
What's
instant.
that?
You just
Oh,
went
really?
gray. Yeah,
Okay. Well, then we'll
It's cool.
do this,
you're
and then
gone.
I'll check it again. How
You're
about
Ah,
now?
back.
it comes back. It comes back. Nice.
Ah,
But
Well
I do
done.
get
What a great
I do
demo.
get a dialog box that says that in order for the change to happen, you need to quit the app. And I think there are some apps where you can kind of hot uncheck and recheck,
yeah,
like I did just there. Other apps, you will actually have to quit the application and then restart it for the change to take
yeah.
effect. So,
Yeah, I've noticed. I'll get that dialog box, and it will allow the screen sharing, even though it says you have to quit. But if I
right,
try to do anything more advanced, like remote control or markup or something, it won't work until I restart.
right.
So
Okay.
yeah, it's best to follow the
Yeah,
instructions,
yeah.
even if it appears to be working, because you may have troubles down the road. Okay, well, we
So
went
that's
over
that. Thank you.
yeah, thanks, Wyatt. Thanks for that.
Yep.
We went over, we didn't meet our half-hour goal. I
That was a nice
apologize. I
demo, though.
overpromised, I under-delivered or over-delivered. I don't know what I did, but great job, everyone. I think we're good till next week. And I think I still need to get the recording up from last week. So I'm going to get the last week and this week's recording up very soon. And is there anything else we want to mention or talk about? Michelle, do you have anything you want to add?
No.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.